if you want to work in this sector,
Yeah.
be ready to get your hands dirty because you have to be on ground all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have with us someone who is the co-founder and president of Footsteps, a recipient of the Diana Awards, a student of former US Vice President Al Gore, someone who has collaborated with the likes of Dr. Yunus and pop star Shawn Mendes. His friends describe him as a world saver by day and a shisha lover by night. But if I were to describe him using one word, it would of course be changemaker. He is none other than Shah Rafayat Chowdhury. Bhaiya, how are you doing today?
Hey, Taran, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. So how has 2021 been going? I know that, a lot of chaos has been happening this year, but has this year felt like this is the year where you're making the most impact or most change in some ways?
I mean, 2020 has been like a bittersweet feeling, to be honest, because with the pandemic, there are certain restrictions that we have to maintain. Like you cannot get out that much. And with the lockdown itself, some of our work was limited as well. But I think the best part about, working on an organization like Footsteps is the adaptability of the organization according to the times. So with the lockdown happening, we shifted our gears in such a way that we will be able to help people who were being affected by the lockdown as well as the pandemic itself. So I would say that 2021, not only 2021, as the years go by, it's been more impactful for us because it's been both a learning experience, and with the experience itself, we've been able to do more for the people. So obviously like 2021 till now has been better than 2020 because we're making more impact. And inshallah, like in 2022, it'll be the same scenario as well. So yeah, that's 2021 right now for us.
Yeah, that's good. Like, what projects have you been working on in this year? Like, a bochore start or something.
All right. So interestingly, some of the projects that we've been working on, we've been thinking about working on them for like a couple of years or like 3 years, 4 years. But we've been able to actually implement them. That's why when people were saying like, you guys are doing great, I always kept telling them, just wait for the lockdown to lift because there are interesting things that are coming up. So this year we launched our Sushasthar Odhikar Shobar program, SOS. It's a medical program where we're looking into innovating and creating newer access to healthcare in last mile communities. So we used to do one specific medical program in the past where we worked on creating vaccine refrigeration units and connecting them to cell towers. So last mile community clinics could store vaccines over there. But now with like the increasing demand, like we did an entire oxygen cylinder campaign alongside we're working on health camps in like, ekdom last mile communities. So we were like, okay, let's go into something where we're actually like properly innovating in that sector itself, public health. So right now we're working on, building ambulances within like 2-3 lakh taka, or like creating first aid medical kits and ensuring every households in every rural household has like has a first aid box with them, so that if they have like a small disease or a cut or symptoms, they can address to it. And recently, I don't know if you've seen the news, we launched, under our disaster resilience program, we actually invented a portable water filter that can convert flood water into drinking water. So interestingly, we've been working on this since 2018. So not a lot of people actually knew about it. So a lot of trial and error process went through before we could actually get on ground. And we're actually very excited that we've been finally able to put that model on ground. And for the next 6 months, we're going to be seeing how much of an impact it's going to bring in. So, like when floods come in, we're kind of worried that what's going to happen. So it might sound a bit disturbing, but we were actually very excited that once the flood comes in, we're going to be able to do something about it. And I think that's it's a very unique quality here at Footsteps about every person at Footsteps is like, problems excite us. So when there's a problem, we start working around what can we do to design a solution that is not only impactful, but sustainable in the long run. And that is the philosophy that we're working on. So these are a couple of the programs, and in terms of water as well, 2021, in terms of campaign and as well as visibility of the organization, it was pretty big because we did our Ramadan campaign. We partnered up with some renowned individuals or celebrities from around the world. Before 2020, we were working a bit under the radar, but 2020 and 2021 were the years where we actually came out and showed people that we were in business in a way. So we did the Ramadan campaign where we raised funds to set up water systems in schools, rural communities, hospitals, etc. Then we also did the COVID-19 campaign where we're providing food aid, food support, as well as oxygen cylinders. So yeah, these are some of the work that we are currently doing right now.
That's good to hear. So let's take it back to your childhood. I knew that your classmates used to make fun of you because you were a little healthy and you were the kid who always used to talk about the environment. So now that you've gotten in shape and you've proven the haters wrong by becoming an icon for, social entrepreneurs, what advice would you give for people to prove the haters wrong?
So one advice, I think this is something that I followed, was that don't stop believing in yourself. If you think you can achieve something, don't depend on what others will tell you. Others can say, yeah, eta hoite parbi na, eta korte parbi na. So this is an example as well. So when I went to college, that was the first time I actually took up a gym membership. So when I was telling my friend who came with me from school to university in the US, when I told him that I'm going to be joining the gym from tomorrow, this was his reaction. Oh, tui gym join korbi? Kichhi hobe na. And then a few months later, I'm buffed up. I'm shaped like a Dorito, and everybody goes what the hell just happened to you over there? So that's one thing. And also as you said, I was an environmentalist from a very young age. So people used to diss me a lot. They used to tell me that when I grew up, I'd be a farmer, Jashiho, etc. and stuff. I was gonna be those hippie activist sort of things. But I always believed that, this was a field that I really loved and I would excel no matter where I was. So, and even the funniest part is, how when you're in school, there's particular aunties as well as teachers who kind of try to influence your family, je na bhabi, eta porte dile hobe na, o bhalo korbe na, mane beshi taka aay korbe na. And I'm really glad that my mom and my dad, they kind of didn't care about what other people thought. They were do whatever you want in that sense. So I was able to chase my dream without any influence being played from outside because of my parents in that way as well, because of the environment that I grew in. So they always made sure that I believed in myself, for which I am who I am till this moment, because of what I believe in myself to be.
Yeah, that's true. The support of parents matters so much. Personally, I own a small business, and every time I'm doing something big or I'm investing something, always amar baba eshe bole je loss hole somosha nai to. It's not you're gonna be losing the roof over your head, or it's not you're gonna be going to sleep hungry, right? Because I'm here. So yeah, that confidence also gives me the courage to think okay, I'm investing all this in one line, and this line might not be profitable, but so what? I'll still have the roof over my head. I'll still go to bed with a tummy full of food, So I guess the support from parents is something.
So I'll share an interesting story on this matter. Yeah. So in 2016, this wasn't a year where one of the darkest years in a way, because I had an argument with my other 5 co-founders in a way, where we were at a stage where we have to decide what path are we going to choose for our careers, or as adults in that sense, because we started Footsteps when we were in high school. So 2016 was the moment where we had to make a critical career decision. So in that, conversation, what came up was like the other five would be like, going forward and doing their own things, be it a job or like startup, whatever it was. But I wanted to fully commit towards Footsteps because it was my dream. So they all left, and then I was alone. And I had 2 weeks before I left again for college. Like I was back for my summer break. And I was like kind of like anxious, like what's gonna happen? Because I am gonna be abroad. There's no one proper to look after the organization at that time in Bangladesh. But then what happened, my mom came up and she goes like, তুই বাইরে যা, তুই পড়তে যা, চিন্তা করিস না, আমি দেখবো তুই যতদিন থাকবি না. So those 3.5 years when I wasn't in Bangladesh, like she was the one who looked over everything, like going to the suppliers, the vendors, as well as communicating with our partners, setting up the water filters. She basically ran the entire thing for 3.5 years. To a certain point, what happened was, like at one time we used to get our water purifier supplies from Stadium Market. So during another like winter break or summer break, when I came back and I went to visit Stadium, there was a guy who just looked at me and he goes like, oh, apni apar chale na, apni bideshe porte jan, apni pani niye kaj kortechen. So the entire Stadium Market knew about her at that point. She had that much of an impact. So I would say that Footsteps is here today because of the hard work that my mom, the sacrifice that my mom put in to those 3.5 years I wasn't here. So parents play a very big role in who you become as a person later on as well.
Yeah. Funny story. That was going to be my next question about sharing some moments when your mom took over the project. But yeah, like when I knew about this, it's really touching that she went and did it for 3.5 years, and that continued you to be able to do it.
Definitely.
So yeah. So I know you went to Penn State, and Penn State is considered one of the most party colleges in the States. So are there any stories of parties that pop to mind when thinking about Penn State?
All right. So, okay, Penn State is considered as one of the biggest party schools, yes. But also in terms of colleges, it is like, if you go somewhere, there's all opportunities. You pick your poison, what you want to do over there. And I think the party culture itself is a very socializing environment where you get to like network with a lot of people as well. So I kind of like fully utilized it in that way. So I'll share a funny story. I was at a bar hanging out with a couple of friends, and then like this random Indian dude comes by, and I have this thing where whenever I'm at like bars, clubs, or like social gatherings, I would pitch about Footsteps. I would share the story about what I was doing back in Bangladesh. And it kind of made people feel very emotional. And this was during my last year or my last semester. So when I was sharing my story with that Indian senior dude, what happened was he was so moved. He gave me $5,000 donation right there. And with that $5,000, I actually paid rent for our office space right after coming back. So that $5,000 played a huge role. So this is what networking is. Wherever you go, try to seize the opportunity, be it like a social gathering, be it like, a business meeting, whatever. The more you share your story, the more people will know and the more influence you'll have in making them join your journey. At least that's what I believe in.
Damn, that's really nice. I was hoping for a story like this, that like I have a friend personally who was like the most shidha shadha chele you can ever meet, right? So he's now in Penn State and he has become like a full-time druggie, like.
So I'll share this one thing. Yeah. Like I was in Scholastica for school and then Penn State for university, and people have like that school pride, but being in Scholastica, being like like how mentally bullied I was and everything, I feel like Penn State kind of had a very big role in like making me who I am today. Like the college itself is so supportive in my end of hours, even today. Like, with the work that I'm doing, I'm connected to the professors, I'm connected to the dean, I'm connected to the president of the university. It's because like they've always had my back. And, like I have changed into a different person, like I've morphed into a different person. Like I said, if you go to college or wherever you are, you pick your poison. I picked networking as my poison. So I tried to create allies everywhere I went. And, like that changed me as a better person. Like I came back as a different person after going to Penn State. Like before, I used to read that Shida Shada kid as well, a kid who lacked confidence. But then after going to Penn State, I became a I became a very confident person that actually believed in whatever he did, no matter the odds. So that's what Penn State did to me. And I'll tell you this one story as well. This was my first party or like social gathering. Okay, so everybody goes in. So this was during the first week of college, like we were freshers. So me and these two other freshmen, were going into our first party, and it was a Bengali party as well. There were a bunch of Scholasticans, like senior Scholasticans, who invited us over. So we go in, and everybody's, like having fun. And then this one guy comes up to me. He's like, "What are you gonna have as drinks?" And at that time, I don't drink. So he goes like, "What drinks are you gonna have?" And I'm like, "Hey, I don't drink." The room goes silent. And then what happened is he takes me to the sofa. And I sit down, and he goes like, "Baba, tumi ki khaba? Doodh na orange juice?" And everybody just starts laughing. But it was pretty cool because they accepted it, and they were like, in certain spaces, like people kind of force you to do something, but they were very chill about it in that sense. And I think they understood the comfort level and everything. But yeah, like that was my first experience. And then like after 4 months, the same this other friend, because like Penn State is a very drinking culture school, like there's like a lot of drinking, partying, whatever. And people think like when you first go in, you're gonna be like changed into that person within the next 4 or 5 months. But it was like 2 years, and my friend was like, "Dost, I can't believe you still haven't done it yet." And I'm like, it's just the willpower, man, nothing else at this point. And I was like a very health conscious individual as well. So, like forget about drinking and stuff. I didn't even have fast food for like 2 years straight. No fast food, no Coke, nothing at that time. So I was very health conscious. So that kind of helped the role behind not being like a drinker or a smoker, but being a very party person. I'm very social at parties. Like I am like, whenever I go in, I am more excited and like, more off the roof kind of a person without drinking than a lot of people who are with drinking. And I think it's because of the experience I bring in from Penn State at this point.
Yeah, I can sort of relate. Like, I don't drink either, I don't smoke, but whenever I'm in like parties or something, everyone's like, "Dost tu ki ashole hai na?" or "Tu ki ashole drunk tam?"
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, cool, and that's because you've worked with most of the youth influencers of the country. You have a Snapchat page. You've achieved the dream of most Bangladeshi teenage girls by working with Shawn Mendes. So how do these help spread the word? And what was that like, the experience of working with an international superstar?
All right. So interestingly, when we were working on Footsteps, like whenever you're working in the development sector, like it sometimes is not like, as you said, it sometimes is not cool. So our mission was to make our work look cool outside so that more people would be encouraged to join in that sense. Because when you're going forward towards a campaign, people usually try to have like a emotional appeal to it. They show like a very sad image, and they're like, convincing you to donate and everything. We wanted to take a very different approach. We wanted to see like, there's a word called FOMO, right? So we wanted to make it kind of like a FOMO campaign, and it kind of worked in that way. So the Ramadan campaign was a hit because at one point, everybody wanted to be a part of it, be it a social media influencer or even like just a normal student individual right there. And it's funny because it's funny and satisfying at the same time as well, because this does have a very big impact. How? Because like there was a person I remember who called us up, and he's like, "Amar bikashe matro 35 takai ase, but I'm sending this to you right now." So imagine the impact that this has. Like we wanted to make it look cool because we believe the work that we did on ground deserved all the support that it gets. So that's why like I feel like the marketing part of the organization is very important. Because if you want people to be a part of your journey, you have to, make it look appealing to them. And the Shawn Mendes part was actually, it came at a right time because it came right in the middle of doing that campaign. So I think I didn't expect it to be like, this viral at one point, because I remember I posted about it at 1 a.m. in the morning. And then I got blasted by like calls from the media, from different people till 11 or 12 a.m. the next morning around that. So it's interesting the work with Shawn Mendes himself. So we didn't reach out to him. He found out about us. So we have so we have a partner in Switzerland, a partner organization called Global Changemakers. So I've been a part of their cohort since 2017, and they've had like a close eye on our work. They love the work that we do. So interestingly, what they did was they sent our profile to Shawn Mendes Foundation, and then he looked over it, and then he's like, I want to work with these people. And that's when they reached out. And it was just 2 weeks before the announcement. So before signing anything, he goes like, okay, I've partnered up with this water brand, and the money that I'm gonna raise, like, and the money that I'm gonna be getting from the sponsorship, I'm going to be putting it into you. So I'm like, all right, so you guys need to start promoting right after that announcement itself. So I was like, all right, that is pretty quick. So then we posted about it, and I think that helped out a lot because, working with somebody like Shawn Mendes or any credible individuals increases your credibility too. And it makes people think, okay, who are these guys? Let me get to know them a bit more. So the partnership, interestingly, the partnership with Shawn Mendes brought in even more partnerships locally and internationally for us, for which we've been able to expand a lot on the work that we do on ground itself. And Shawn Mendes, okay, so this is another exciting info. Shawn Mendes is not going to be the only celebrity we're going to be working with. So come December, you guys will find out who else we're going to be working with as well.
All right, that's good to hear. Looking forward to it. Did you like get on a call with Shawn Mendes? Did you talk to him? How was he like? Just because a lot of people would want to know. So yeah.
That incident, I'll also share like a funny incident as well. So before that call, the announcement that I made itself, so there was a comment about Ghulam Don Samdani, who was like, let's try to bring him here for a concert. And like, don't worry, I'll make sure of the sponsors and everything. I think that kind of triggered a lot of like exciting fans. So in Bangladesh, so these young girls, they were going on social media and like, they were going live or taking stories that Shawn is coming to my country, etc., etc. That kind of had an impact on me because the next night at around 12 a.m., I received an email from his PR team, and they're like, Shah, can you come online? We want to check all the PRs that you've done, and we want to see if you specifically mentioned that Shawn is coming to Bangladesh. And I'm like, all right. And they were like, because we're getting a lot of traffic from Bangladesh that Shawn might be coming there. And I'm like, I haven't talked to him yet regarding it. And he already knows about this. And then we get on a call for an hour. We're just checking through Daily Star, Dhaka Tribune, all the publications, whether it is, because it wasn't in the contract. The contract is for setting up water systems in schools, not about him coming here yet. But I'll be working on that too. But it's interesting because Shawn loves these kind of works. And when we were on a call, I love the fact that, he appreciated the work that we did. And he was excited that he was going to be able to work in Bangladesh through us. And inshallah, like no promises yet, but I'm going to be trying my concert itself, but also visit the site where we're setting up the water systems on behalf of Shawn Mendes Foundation. So yeah, that was the story of him.
So that was an interesting story. And now let's get on talking with like perhaps your biggest project till date, which is Project Trishna, right? So could you talk about how you ensure such a magnitude of such a big project is maintained and sustainable? Because it is a project that has distributed safe, clean drinking water to about more than 6 million liters, if I'm not wrong, of safe, clean drinking water to the people. And you've partnered up with clothing brands to promote it. So how has that been going? And do you plan on expanding it to more schools and more regions?
All right. So Project Trishna started from an experience that I had with the rickshaw puller. I was traveling from Gulshan to Tejgao, and Niketoner মাঝখান দিয়ে যাওয়ার সময় the rickshaw puller goes like, "Mama, আমি একটু পানি খেতে হবে, একটু আসতেছি." But he didn't have a water bottle on him. So what he did was he crossed the road, and there was a small filter placed outside an apartment building, and he drank the water from there. And that kind of like, inspired me in a way that I was studying about CSR, corporate social responsibility at that time. And it gave me the idea, okay, why don't I try to replicate the same scenario and put it in front of like, different company offices or like buildings where we're going to have the logo of like the funding company over there. So whenever anybody's drinking the water or passing by, we'll know which company was responsible for ensuring safe water in that specific area. And that's how Project Trishna started. But after a couple of years, I think around 2018, we kind of were in a conundrum in a way that that if we were actually making an impact itself. So what happened was, we are setting up Project Trishna systems in all of these, affluent areas, Gulshan, Bonani, Baridhara, because like all the companies were situated here. So we were like, okay, are we actually making an impact, right? So then we made a call about like, where can we set up these water systems where it'll make more impact? And that's when a school teacher reached out to me from Lalbagh to government primary school. And he shares his story about how most of his kids were missing classes because they were suffering from diseases like diarrhea. And he suspected that it was from drinking the water from the school taps. But let me tell you, in government primary schools or in like schools within marginalized communities, kids spend most of the time in a day in their schools, because they love like, the environment over there. It's like an escape from poverty for them in a way. So that's why they were exposed to drinking water from over there. And when I went to check the water station, when I put my finger inside one of the taps, a bunch of rust just fell on my fingers. And with that story, I went to one of my partners in Bangladesh. After sharing the story, the director gave me funding for five water stations in Trishna, and that's how we started the school model. So as you can see, Project Trishna is a very story-based or an experience-based journey itself. So one experience led to the other, for which, the organization, the project itself grew in a way. And even like during Ramadan campaign, we actually didn't have any plans to work on tube wells, because like it was a very traditional solution. But then like one of like the donors requested if like we could work on it. And when we started looking into it, we found out that in a lot of these places, groundwater source was clean, but people weren't able to extract it because of the money it took to set it up. It was a very small amount for us, but a very big amount for these community members. And that's when we started the Ramadan campaign for tube wells itself. So we've set up over 20 tube wells, and we're still expanding because people are still coming up to us whether we can set up tube wells right now. So currently, water itself is a very multidimensional problem. So what we do is like, you can just go in a community and set up a water system. But if you do not, properly train these people on how to maintain the systems, what happens is the project kind of like, collapses in the next 6 months when you're not there. And we wanted it to be sustainable. So what we did was, instead of just setting up the water system using CSR or like donor funding, we taught the communities on how to financially and technically maintain these systems. So what happened was, even if we were not there, the communities would be able to maintain these systems by themselves without any donor support. So after setting up a system, within a year's time, the community didn't have to depend on donor funding anymore. So technically, we were teaching them how to change the filter components. And then when they were like, how do you buy the filters itself? They cost a lot. We taught them how to crowdfund or like create a digital banking interface, or even like, something as simple as savings, save this much money or allocate this much as a budget. So that ensured that Trishna would sustain in these communities where we set it up, even if the donors left from those communities. So that is why Project Trishna has been successful. Right now, Project Trishna is active in 5 districts across Bangladesh, ensuring safe water access for over 75,000 people. And inshallah, with the coming days, especially this month itself, you'll see we're going to go on a massive expansion with Trishna as well.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, like I read in a book that if you want to like stop what's it called? Like if you want to stop children from dying in rural areas, instead of building a hospital, you should build a school. Because if 100 children die, 20 of them can go to the hospital. The 80 die because they don't know how to prevent that disease. So the fact that cleaner water is actually also allowing them to go to more schools because, you know, they don't have diarrhea and stuff is literally, in every sense of the word, life-saving. Right. And I know the story about how this little kid came to you and said that, "Bhai, apnar jonno amader panite gandho thake na ekhon ar." So I'm sure stories like those are things that keep you going. So are there any stories like those that you would like to share? Any more stories?
Yeah. So interestingly, you brought one of those up, but I'll share the initial story we had with Project Trishna. So right after setting up the first batch of Project Trishna systems, me and my then partner, Nahian Nasser, I think you might know him. He's the founder of Gorugash. So me and my partner, we went over there. We were trying to see like how people were accepting the systems themselves. So this was near Gulshan Avenue, right on the main road. We set up one of the Trishna systems, and we were just standing in front of it to see how people accepted it and stuff. And then this entire experience happened where this kid, the street child, with his younger brother on his shoulder, comes in, and they're looking at the film, trying to understand what it is. And after 2 minutes, the bigger brother, the older brother, he bends down, he takes the cup, pours a glass of water, drinks it himself, and then gives the water to his younger brother. Those kids didn't have sandals on them, but now they had access to clean drinking water. And for the next upcoming years, we faced a lot of challenges with Project Trishna, but whenever we faced a challenge, I always thought of that moment itself. And that moment gave me the courage to move forward and address the challenges no matter the odds. So this experience, and the one that you shared as well, was in Munda Government Primary School. So let me share the situation. So the school is situated in Uttarakhand, which is right beside the Tongi River, and Tongi River is extremely polluted. So what happens is the river water seeps into groundwater sources, and it pollutes the groundwater sources, for which there's a very pungent odor itself from the water. So when we set up the water station, we kind of set up odor removal units as well to filter the odor out. And right after setting it, the kids had the first glass of water from there. After having the first glass, there were a lot of kids going in and just keeping on drinking like there's no tomorrow. And then this kid just ran up to me and he's like, "Bhaiya, amader pani tar kono gandho nai." And that was an extremely heartwarming moment. And whenever we go into these communities, these are the experiences that we have. And I strongly believe it. These experiences are more rewarding than any international, national award or recognition out there, because I wouldn't trade these experiences for anything else. And these are the experiences that keep us actually going. Not any awards, not any press releases, not any recognition, but these experiences purely.
Yeah. There's this quote, work for the work and not for the thanks, and the thanks will come.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
The thanks is the byproduct. Don't focus on the byproduct.
Yeah. So I know that Footsteps has a non-profit organization, has a non-profit side and as well as a profit side, right? So could you talk a little bit about the profit side and some of the backlashes that maybe you face, because people are like, "Hey, NGO the profit kora chesta hoteche," or something, I'm sure you've heard those. Yeah. So could you share a little bit about those?
All right. So let me tell you what Footsteps is. we created an entirely new definition for the word NGO itself. So when people think of NGO, it's a non-governmental organization or a non-profit organization. We call ourselves a next generation organization where we take the best aspects from a non-profit and a for-profit, mix them together to make a next generation organization that works towards not only sustainability, but also innovation within community empowerment and community challenges themselves. So we are a next generation organization. But when we were working on the for-profit sector, what we did was we designed social ventures that would have a profit model itself. Like with Trishna itself, Trishna provides water for free. But in some areas, if you need to sustain a solution, you need to make an income source in order to pour it back into that system itself. Like, for example, if you set up a water plant, a very high-end water plant in an area like Shatkira, and then you do not you charge the water for free, then who will be maintaining the systems? Because donor funding is very, how do I say this? Donor funding is you cannot expect donor funding to just come in every time whenever you expect it, because and if you give too much power to the donors, then that puts that project in a very threatening situation. So if you want a project to sustain at certain points, the project itself needs to make a profit, not us, but the project itself. Because what happens is when the profit comes in, we then reinvest the profits in all the projects that we have. It's not like the profits go into every board member's bank account and everything. It goes all into footsteps. So it's like a very cycling model itself. So yeah, we face some backlashes regarding this, but in certain areas there's a need, and we don't force it upon people. Like Footsteps is an organization which works on ground with the people themselves. They're the ones who suggest it to us. And we basically build a solution using their opinions. So if they want the solution where they sustain, the profit mainly goes to them. Because for example, I'll share an experience that I had just a couple of days ago when I was in Kushtia. I was sitting down with a group of farmers, and they were sharing the story how an organization that produces cigarettes, what they're doing is they're kind of hogging on the profits of the rice that they were cultivating in those areas, because that certain company had a hand cutter machine, which the farmers did not, because it costs a lot. It costs 12 to 14 lakhs. So what we are trying to do at Footsteps is we're going to try to purchase one of those machineries and then give it to the farmers group, and they will pay us on a rent basis, but to sustain that project itself. It's not like we're going to be taking the money off, because they're getting this device, the renting out this device for a much lower cost than the one from that other company itself. But they also understand the fact that that system needs to run itself. If it's a donation model, it's not going to work. So what we're doing is we're making a hybrid solution, because at times certain challenges can be addressed with a nonprofit approach, and certain challenges can be addressed with a for-profit approach. So we're taking a mixture and trying to design a solution, taking the best of both aspects.
Yeah, that sounds like a more sustainable long-term project, because I would also assume that, say, someone donates something, someone donates this machine to the farmers, and they'll think, okay, machine to the free, use kori. But now exactly. They'll think, okay, I need to pay for this machine, and if I don't use it wisely, then next month it's not going to be here, right? So yeah, that sounds very interesting. So
it's mainly the accountability that we try to build through this model. Because if a person who we are working for, if a benefactor is not taking accountability for the solutions that we're pitching to them, then the project will not last. So that's what we try to do. We try to build that accountability.
Yeah. So as we're winding down, I just have two more questions left. So you've been invited to many countries to talk about Project Trishna, to talk about Footsteps, your work in general. Is there any misconception that you've heard in other countries about Bangladesh that you'd like to change something?
All right. So, like I think this is an open, I wouldn't even say this is an open secret. It's just out in the open. Whenever like I go abroad, there's one of the two things. One of the two things that happens. One, is Bangladesh a part of India? Number two, you guys are flooded all the time. Do you live have you experienced flooding like on a regular basis, something like that? But I'll share an interesting story regarding this. This was actually my first assignment, and this was a bit before Footsteps as well. So I was Bangladesh's youth ambassador to the United Nations for a couple of years. So my first assignment was in Rio de Janeiro to attend the Earth Summit called Rio Plus 20. So when I went over there, I remember like right after the summit, I went into McDonald's, and Brazilians can't speak English at all. It's all Portuguese. So I'm trying to explain to the counter, like, I want, well, like if the burger has pork or beef, the guy's not understanding anything. But then this other Brazilian guy standing beside me, he just comes forward. He's like, he's explaining in Portuguese that the dude wants beef, and then the counter understood it. But right after he helped us solve the problem, he goes up to me and he goes like, "Namaste Bhai Sahab, I just love your country, India." And I'm like, I am not from India, man. So these are the certain experiences that I have faced whenever I was abroad. But being in the development sector, when you're going to these sort of conferences related to the development work, at times it's also baffling to see how Bangladesh is taking a lead in these conferences, because when it comes to climate change, or when it comes to development sector, we're actually playing a very vital role and a very inspiring role for a lot of other countries to follow. For example, in terms of climate change, the Bangladesh negotiation team at the UN is one of the best in the world, especially in terms of the G77. And when it comes to development sector, we all know what contribution BRAC has made. It's the world's largest NGO, and their example is used everywhere around the world. So it's good to see at some points wherever I'm going that Bangladesh is being represented highly, but it's also very depressing to see that at some places when you're going, Bangladesh, people mostly don't know Bangladesh. And there's actually kind of led towards the formation of Footsteps itself. So when I was flying back from Rio, there was I was in economy, and there was a really beautiful Brazilian girl sitting right beside me, and we got to talking. And when she asked me where I was from, and when I said Bangladesh, and she's like, "Where is that?" And that gave me the idea that, I've been given this really great opportunity to represent my country at these UN conferences. Why don't I try to introduce my country to them through something that I know is one of the best parts of the country, which is the youth itself. So we created a magazine called Born to Smile, which highlighted the work of 7 of the best youth organizations at that time. And that also is what led me to Al Gore, because he found out about the magazine, and then he invited me over to Chicago for a training on public speaking and climate action for over a week. So, and after that training itself, the training gave me the courage to come back home, sit down with my friends in the Scholastic and cafeteria, and tell them that I want to start an organization with you guys. So you see, life is like a chain of events, and experiences creates that entire domino effect, at least in my life, in that sense.
Yeah. So that brings the entire interview to a full circle, starting from your childhood to how Footsteps was formed. So lastly, when people think about Bangladesh, we specialize in a lot of things. We specialize in RMG. Recently, we specialize in leather. And one thing a lot of people don't seem to talk about is that Bangladesh also is sort of the home of NGOs, if you think about it. The biggest NGO in the world, like you said, and a lot of youth are starting NGOs or youth organizations. So for these people who are starting work like this, do you have any advice for them? Any things to get them through the dark days?
All right. It's a good thing that you mentioned this, because this is something that I preach to a lot of these youth organization leaders who come, because the initial days I'll be brutally honest, the initial days are extremely hard. You do not have the funds, you do not have the resources, but one thing that you have is the willpower. But it depends on what kind of willpower you have. Because what I've seen is like there are a lot of organizations, like young organizations that are chasing behind the recognition or chasing behind the funding itself. That's not the main goal. If you actually want to work in this sector, your willpower should be on how to solve these problems for good. The recognition, the awards, the money, whatever, those are just byproducts of the willpower that you have. Ensure that you have that willpower. Nothing will stop you in your way. Because let me tell you, when I first started out, I went to different friends to ask them for 4,000 to 5,000 taka for registration. None of them would give it to me because they didn't have any belief in me. But because I was going around sharing this story with different people, one of my friend's mom got to know about it. She called me to her office and gave me 40,000 taka right there and goes like, chase your dreams because I believe you can do it. Although I didn't know her that well, but she was so moved because of the story that I was sharing, the thing that I wanted to do. She felt like I was worth investing in that way. So you never know where that light of hope comes in. So one thing, straighten up your willpower. Don't stop believing in that willpower and keep sharing your story to as many people as possible. Because once you share, there's a chance more people with resources can come join your journey and make it impactful. So remember one thing, this is a name that this is the quote that has inspired the name Footsteps itself. The journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. So after you take that single step, remember there's 999 more steps to take. So be sure that you're able to take those steps. Once you do, you will see the result.
Yeah, that's true. That I feel like is an advice, like you said, is brutally honest. And a lot of people, even though maybe they think, okay, I'm working for the good, but instinctively or subconsciously, they are really looking for the fame or they are really looking for the money. So yeah, it is something
I'll
that.
add another thing. I'll
Yeah,
just
of
add
course.
one more thing.
Yeah.
If you want to work in this sector, be ready to get your hands dirty because you have to be on ground all the time. Like my visual representation right now is because I was on ground. Like I used to be a bit more fair, but I got sunburned on another level because I've been working constantly for the last 5 days, going ground to ground, visiting people, talking to people. So be sure that you're ready for such a commitment, because it's not going to be an easy journey, even after a few years. If you enjoy being on ground, getting your hands dirty, then this is the career path for you.
Yeah, that's true. So, Bharat, thank you for coming on board. Thank you for coming and being a part of the show. We've usually had like singers and celebrities, models. This is the first time we've had someone who is, saving lives. So it was a very wonderful experience for me. And thank you for being a part of the show. And I hope you enjoyed it.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure for me to be a part of this. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And hopefully, like the things that we shared will be able to help a lot of people who will be seeing this once it's released. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me over.